I bring you very warm fraternal greetings from the leadership of the Nigerian Labour Congress. It is my delight and honor to welcome you all to this roundtable on social protection cover with the theme expanding social protection cover and ensuring effective implementation in Nigeria. The decision to hold this roundtable was a fallout of the recent Second National Peace and Security Summit organized by the Nigerian Labour Congress. From the paper presentations made at the summit and the ensuing expert and plenary discussion, it was firmly established that the crisis of physical insecurity in Nigeria has very strong tie with human insecurity, especially as marked by the dearth of social protection cover for the poor and the most vulnerable in our society. Social protection is essential for human security and social justice. It is the foundation of peaceful societies committed to share wealth and prosperity. The United Nations, over a decade ago, endorsed social protection law for fair globalization. Equally, the International Labour Organization Convention 102 and the International Labour Organization Recommendation 202 and the SDG Goal 1.3 on social protection system for all by the year 2030 give credence to the centrality of social protection to sustainability of progress. A social protection floor such as basic income security, including cash transfers where needed, pensions, disability benefits, unemployment benefits and support, maternity protection, children benefits, also universal access to essential social services such as healthcare, education, water and sanitation, and housing makes a lot of difference in our society today. Social protection is a fundamental human right intended not only to set a minimum social security floor, but also plays an important role in alleviating poverty and providing income security for all. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights and International Covenant of Economic Security and Cultural Rights recognize the right of all to social security. As a human right and a component of decent work, social protection allows workers and the entire populace to be safe and also foster family values. It provides compensation in case of lost or reduced income and permit access to adequate health care. Comrades, our special guests of honor, before the advent of COVID-19 pandemic, there was a gross underestimation of the deficit and gap in global social protection cover, especially in developing countries, including our country, Nigeria. The pandemic has exposed the deep-seated inequality and significant gaps in social protection cover, comprehensiveness and adequacy across all countries. Furthermore, perverse socio-economic challenges such as high level of economic insecurity, persistent poverty, rising inequality, extensive informality, and a fragile social contract have been exacerbated by COVID-19 and the failure by governments of the world to deploy social protection cover for all. The COVID-19 insurgency has also exposed the weaknesses of the current global economic model and social protection system. More than 4 billion persons, constituting about 53% of the global population, are completely unprotected against economic shocks. With about 17.1% social protection cover, Africa has the least social protection cover for its citizens. In fact, it's more perverse in West and Central African countries. And therefore, it leaves most Africans vulnerable to economic shock, poverty, hunger, huge sickness burdens, illiteracy, and destitution. The state of social protection cover and standard of living indices leave very little to desire. As of 2020, data from the National Bureau of Statistics shows that about 83 million Nigerians, representing over 40% of the total population, live in abject poverty. As of March 2021, about 33.3% of Nigerians are unemployed. These are not mere statistics, but they speak volume to what needed to be done and what the challenges are. Comrades, it is for this reason that the International Labour Organization prioritized at this year's conference, 2014 International Labour Conference, the issue of bringing about universal social protection for all and the issue of a new social contract that will make sure that no worker, no citizen in any country is actually left behind. Just yesterday, comrades, the United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, called for accelerated action on social protection and jobs as an escape door from uneven global recovery and future crises. The UN Secretary General called for measures to achieve job-rich recovery and a just transition to a sustainable and inclusive economies all around the world. This is no doubt a clarion call. In fact, in specific terms, Mr. Guterres called for jobs and social protection cover that will create at least 4 million jobs and the extension of social security cover to the over 4 billion women and children currently without any coverage. In summary, comrades, we demand for a new social contract, including universal social protection cover from our Nigerian political elites. Once again, comrades, Your Excellency, the Right Honorable Speaker, I welcome you all to this very important roundtable.
The Honorable Speaker of the Federal House of Representatives of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
I've always believed, consistently, that any politician, whatever position you occupy, that does not have the interests of the worker at heart is not a true politician. I believe the raison d'etre, the reason why politicians exist is to serve the people. And you are the people that we serve. Social protection is one of the most important responsibilities of government. It is how we live up to the constitutional obligation to ensure that suitable and adequate shelter, suitable and adequate food, reasonable national minimum living wage, old age care and pensions, and unemployment, sick benefits and welfare of the disabled are provided for all citizens. It is how we ensure that the people born in the territory of Nigeria can live their lives of accomplishment and contribute to society meaningfully all through their lives. Social protection ensures that through life's vicissitudes, no citizen of our country falls so short that they lose faith in their ability to get back up, or begin to believe that the path to a better life for themselves and their families requires them to commit crimes against the state and other citizens. Many of us may not realize it, but there's a strong connection or correlation between lack of social protection, poverty, and crime. Social protection legitimizes the state in the eyes of citizens and bestows on government the moral authority to demand fidelity to the laws of the land and to take punitive action against those who choose to act in ways inimical to the collective good. So when we gather, as we have done this morning, to think together, brainstorm together about the ways to improve social protection cover in our country, we are engaged in a fundamental act of nation building. We are making sure that there is a collective agreement on what it will take to achieve our best visions for Nigeria and the welfare of all nations' people, of our nation's people. I expect that having secured agreement on what needs to be done, we will then do what is required. On behalf of my colleagues in the House of Representatives, I am honored to declare this roundtable open and to dedicate our gathering here today to the Nigerian people on whose behalf we have so gathered. I must profusely thank the President of the Nigerian Labour Congress, Comrade ABUJA, and the entire national leadership for envisioning and implementing this roundtable on a subject that is critical to the peaceful prosperity of our beloved country. And I thank the organization for the invitation to participate in what I expect will be productive conversations about the future of our country. May God bless and keep us, and may God bless our Federal Republic. Thank you.
Please, let's give you more applause, ladies and gentlemen.
What are the similarities?
Prior to this ILO Convention on Social Protection, Convention 102, and the recommendations following it have been there. So in terms of taking care of the person on the ground and the people in that lower rung of the ladder. Therefore, our government have been committed to that, but this commitment, we need it to be set up with the COVID-19 pandemic. COVID-19 has dislocated the world of work. It has changed it. People now work from home. People now don't gather so much. People now do a lot of automation. And so, if we automate most of the things that people use physical presence to do, it means our work will be affected. So, we have now to put on our thinking caps and go over it. How do we maneuver in this age so that the old age benefits, employment and injury benefits, healthcare benefits, unemployment benefits, maternity benefits, invalidity benefits, survival benefits, sickness benefits, and even family benefits will be addressed in a situation where the economy has become very bleak. Tough order, very, very tough. But it is when the situation becomes tough that the tough will keep going. So I asked Nlc, I asked the private sector in Nigeria, the labor unions, associations, and those in the informal sector to all come out to be counted at this period. We need some big formalization in the informal sector. I was telling the IPMAN delegation that came to see me that everybody now has to start formalizing their workers. Formalizing. I know a lot of you are afraid that you won't pay minimum wage or you will be required to pay minimum wage. Minimum wage is a sort of social protection because it's for the people down at the lowest rung of the ladder. People who engage people in teaching in primary and secondary school as teachers, people who have BSc, some have MSc, and they pay in 20,000 naira a month. It is underemployment and it's not acceptable. Any organization that has minimum of 25, you must formalize people and give them minimum wage. So minimum wage is one of the ways to go. Even when you don't have the number as prescribed and you have number up to 5, you must go and do pension returns for them as per the PECON Act. Or you do the micro pension. so that these people can get something at the end of the day. So I think that the time for all this is now. Thank you very much.
Please, we can do more. Please, let's put our hands together for this very intimidating remarks. Indeed, this goodwill message.
Today, there is global economic recession, and more than perhaps any government in contemporary Nigeria, President Muhammad Buhari administration has succeeded in putting so many palliative measures in place for the unemployed. But to us, what happens to the workforce, the current workers, those who are still active in service? I think there's a need for us to have a master plan that will look at how we can improve the standard of living of Nigerian workers. I hold the view that the time has come for labor to equally come out and present issues that will help us to look at the well-being of workers holistically. Because the well-being of Nigerian workers is the well-being of the nation. If workers are not happy, whatever programs and policies of government that are in place will not just materialize. I believe that Nigerian workers deserve more than what they are getting today. And I believe that if we work hand in hand, I'm talking about the National Assembly and the Nlc, we can help to look at measures that we put in place that will minimize and reduce the challenges of living in a global economic recession as we have today. Ladies and gentlemen, my colleagues in the struggle, there is no Nigerian, including those of us in the National Assembly, that are not feeling the pain of the economy. The fact is, you cannot sleep, you cannot represent a group of people and you can sleep with your two eyes closed when the people are hungry. So you can't be comfortable. The comfort of the people, of the populace, of the workforce is the comfort of legislators and those who have been elected. Once the people are at peace and their 3 square meters guaranteed and good medical service is put in place, then you can be proud to say you represent the people. So I look forward to the successful deliberations of this roundtable. And the National Assembly are equally waiting for it. Let us look at how we can join hands together with you and make life more meaningful, so that we can reduce the economic pressure, which is global, but we must provide solutions to the problem that is confronting our workers. Nigerian Labour Congress is one formidable union that the government itself, they have respect for. So when you come out with a resolution here, please be rest assured that it's not going to be thrown under the carpet. We are ambassadors of the NSC in the National Assembly, so we look forward to you submitting to us. Thank you. God bless you.
Social protection has grown from not just a social policy, but also a vital economic tool used to eradicate poverty and social exclusion. On recognizing the importance of social protection, the ILO, alongside with its member state, adopted the Social Protection Recommendation 202 in 2012. And this recommendation speaks specifically to social protection floors. At the minimum, social protection floors should comprise the following nationally defined sets of goods and services or basic social security guarantees. It talks of access to essential health care, basic income security, basic income security for children, and also basic income security at a nationally defined minimum level for older persons. Ladies and gentlemen, let me also take this opportunity during this occasion to commend the government of Nigeria under the leadership of President Muhammad Buhari for the significant steps that have been taken towards the establishment of a social protection floor in the last few years. Particularly in 2016, we saw the federal government of Nigeria adopting a national social protection policy, which has been, or which more than 10 years ago have since been domesticated to facilitate implementation at the state level by 10 states. During the same period, the Social Assistant Coordinating Platform was set up, and this was to provide oversight to a large-scale safety net program at the federal and also at the state level. The scaling up of the various social assistance programs, such as the homegrown school feeding program, the N-Power scheme, the GEEP, and the conditional cash transfer to poor and vulnerable households. The introduction of the micro-pension scheme and a decentralization agenda, which is initiated under the National Health Insurance Scheme, has also shown progress towards establishing universal health coverage. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, the creation of the digital national ID system, linking residents to a social government service and ensuring, most importantly, financial inclusion. In 2019, President Buhari also announced the government commitment to lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty and set up a new federal ministry of humanitarian affairs, disaster management, and social development to institutionalize social protection in the country. The latest ILO Social Security inquiry, performed in collaboration with the government of Nigeria in 2019, just 2 years ago, indicate that social protection mechanisms largely cover only 13% of people living in Nigeria. In reality, is only 11% of the population which is effectively covered or protected, at the least in one area of social protection. Most of the individuals covered fall under three main contributory social schemes or social security schemes, which cover health, employment injury, survivor, and old age contingencies. The vast majority of the Nigerian population falls outside of the contributory scheme and social assistance program, with 90% of the workers in Nigeria in the informal economy and only 14% of all residents living below the national poverty line. Many people in the informal economy, which we call in the middle or the missing middle, have either no means to contribute to their own social protection or find themselves willing but unable to contribute because the schemes that are in existence are not accessible to them, or they do not address their specific needs and requirements. Ladies and gentlemen, the ILO, as required by the 2019 ABUJA Declaration on social justice shaping the future of work in Africa, supports efforts to extend social protection for all. For instance, expanding social protection is a key priority for the International Labour Organization in the region. To achieve this objective, the ILO is supporting the government of Nigeria through the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, the National Social Security Net Office, the National Health Insurance Scheme in the following areas: the development of the National Social Protection Harmonization Bill, the strengthening and expanding of the National Social Security Registry for shock-responsive social protection system, the actuarial evaluation of the NHIS for the scheme financial equilibrium, and the revision of the National Social Protection Bill. And all our tripartite constituents are part of these processes, and I do hope and I am very comforted by some of the speakers before me and the willingness to also get some of this work approved and finalized, as we believe it will create the necessary regulatory framework at the federal and at the national level to start seeing some progress and also start seeing the extension of social protection to vulnerable workers. I commit the ILO to continue to work to mainstream social protection issues into all relevant areas of work as outlined in the ABUJA Declaration. May I also say this roundtable provides an opportunity for a robust discussion that covers a number of areas that President Waba would have also highlighted in his opening remarks. To guarantee effective social protection for all, it is essential to close the coverage gaps and adapt social protection system to the evolving demands in the world of work. In particular, social protection systems should be adapted to the specific situations and needs of workers, including those in the new forms of employment. Social insurance will also continue to play a key role in ensuring broader scope and higher levels of protection. Distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, as you deliberate concerning all these issues, it is important to reiterate the very important role that trade union in Nigeria play in advocating the extension of social protection to all, including those in the informal economy. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you once again and wish you good deliberations. Let me leave you with a reflective quote by one of the Peace Prize winners and a great man of Africa, my countryman, Nelson Mandela, who said, and I quote, "When people are determined, they can overcome anything." Nyabonga. Thank you. Solidarity.
So it's my honor and privilege to then yield the floor to our chairman and also invite the others to join on the high table, please.
I've been told to look at health insurance scheme, National Housing Fund, Employee Compensation Scheme, Contributory Pension Scheme, and ITF. Of the 5 items, I'm in a position to discuss 4. Unfortunately, I never had the opportunity, in spite of my interaction with NECA, to have a feedback or perspective on ITF. So I believe the representative of ITF today may provide that perspective. I'm also on a safer ground because both the NLC president and the ILO representative had articulated the key issues. So perhaps my work is to briefly take these issues, look at what is happening in that sector, what are those implementation challenges, and what we need to do. So in other words, we've implemented at least 4 or 5 different social protection schemes. To what extent have we been able to achieve our desired goals? And what do we need to do? And what are those challenges? So I'll start with the health insurance scheme. There's no doubt about it. I think both previous speakers have talked extensively about the fact that for universal coverage, as a country, we're still behind South Africa, which has about 69%, Ghana 47%, and even Benin Republic 40. We are about 42, so almost the size in percentage of Benin Republic. So we're far behind. But one thing that is very, very challenging, which the NLC president made reference, is out-of-pocket expenses. As of 2017, about almost 77% in Nigeria Nigerians pay out of pocket to access healthcare services. Compared with South Africa, which is just about 8%, or even Ghana, 40%, Benin, essentially 45%, Kenya, 24%, as against the WHO minimum percentage of 30%. So obviously, in terms of coverage, we're still very low. I had the opportunity of visiting Kenya about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and we went to inspect certain hospitals that specialize in oncology, and went to a private hospital, and we saw a very large number of patients, and we asked, what are they doing there? And they were there for radiotherapy. Majority of them, by their looks and their appearance, they're obviously people that are not as rich as in Nigeria. And yet they were having access to cancer therapy services. And the reason was simple. They had a very robust health insurance scheme. In Nigeria, compared with Nigeria, for you to access the same service, you need somebody at the upper class, so to speak. In other words, you must be working for either some of these large corporates, whether they're in banking or insurance, or perhaps oil and gas. So clearly, we're far behind. However, there have been some development. Of course, the Health Insurance Act was amended in 2014, and Section 11 provided for an equity fund. Fortunately, that equity fund, which is 1% of CRF, a consolidated revenue of the Federation, is not being faithfully implemented, just like the ABUJA declaration of 15%. So in terms of health budget, is extremely low, and it is something that as Labour we need to work on. But what are the problems in the health insurance scheme? It's voluntary, so it's not mandatory. And therefore, the tendency that people are unlikely to join. And given the fact that there is this conception that healthcare is a social responsibility, and therefore people, including those who can afford, are not willing to pay for the services. Of course, informal sector, the NLC president and the ILO representative said, substantial part of our economy is dominated by the informal sector, which makes it extremely difficult for people to raise funds. But we also have inconsistent policies that have undermined the build-up of the equity fund. There is lack of political will to implement the ABUJA plan, declaration, and also ensure that at least there is an equity fund that has been established. But in terms of operations, perhaps this is where the challenge is. The dual role of the health insurance scheme. They are both regulators or supervisors and also operators. There's a conflict of interest. And this cuts across, including the National Housing Fund, the employee compensation scheme, and as long as you have a regulator also being an operator, it's going to be an extremely difficult position. And that's why, of course, the supervisory role becomes undermined. Governance structures are very weak, and the reason is simple. When you have an institution that is managing other people's money, the tendency that everybody's interest will be there. The day you are appointed a chief executive, I can tell you somebody is planning to see how we can take over from you. And that's why, for instance, in the 20-year history of the health insurance scheme, out of that, in the 11 years, they had 9 chief executives. Clearly is an indication of weak corporate governance, but also interference from the political perspective. So the asset management is an issue. Basically, I understand still the asset is extremely low, maybe perhaps 150 billion or thereabout. You know, multiple schemes at different levels, which creates a huge problem. Now, so what do we do? I think for the health insurance, we should make it mandatory. Perhaps being a human rights requirement, perhaps it should also be enshrined in our constitution. Nigerian government must have that political will, not only to implement the ABUJA declaration, but also to ensure that the equity fund is funded significantly. And that's for the healthcare expenditure generally. Yes, moving from 4% to 15% is a tall order, but there must be a commitment. And also even the structure of the budget, 70 to 80% of the healthcare budget today, actually on overheads and salaries. So you don't have funds that could be used for capital expenditure. Today in Nigeria, we don't have a PET scan for scanning cancer patients. And the reason is simple. We don't have a cyclotron machine. In Africa, we have 3, one in Cairo, one in Nairobi, another one in South Africa. Clearly, it's expensive, but it can still be bought. So which means that cancer diagnosis is still a guesswork. But with PET scan, you can go to the extent that, and you can only do that if substantial part of our budget is used to fund our capital expenditure, basically. And I think we also need to agree that NHIS should either be a regulator or an operator. Perhaps that will address the conflict of interest and also minimize significant aspect. We also need to be innovative. When you're talking about the informal sector, how does a rural farmer pay for contribution? Can he pay contribution by the produce for the products he actually produced, basically? And beyond that, of course, enlightenment, public education, advocacy, and that cuts across all the schemes. In addition to that, of course, is the fact that we need to regulate our operators. Today, it takes just about 400 million to have an HMO license. This is a risk-taking activity. To what extent can we make them more robust, properly capitalized, of course with a significant and substantial part of their processes and systems to provide an effective service delivery. Let me also quickly run to, or rather discuss, employee contribution scheme. Of course, this is a scheme that was enacted in 2010 following the Pension Reform Act that took away the pension portion of Social Security from NSITF. And one of the key principles is a no-fault clause. As we are aware, in the past, we had Employee Compensation Act that allowed insurance company to provide that. That has been repealed, and a government-established agency was mandated to do that. So a fund is created for that, the details of which, of course, is known to us. I understand about 6 million employees have joined the scheme, largely from the federal government, so largely from the private sector and few from the federal government. Subnationals and local government, there is no evidence they have joined the scheme. Perhaps the fund should be in the region of 50 to 60 billion, the details of which I believe the MD will provide. Low-level compliance, of course, by subnationals is an issue. I also forgot to mention with the National Health Insurance Scheme, because of the opportunities for the equity fund, a number of states have joined. Almost, I think, 35 or so have joined the scheme, which is a good development. The most important thing is the sustainability. Coming back to the health employee compensation, they also have the same problem. The dual role, they are operating, and they are also supposed to supervise the same scheme. And perhaps that explains the high and, of course, the controversial leadership crisis. A number of the previous chairmen or board members of NSITF have been going to EFCC. And the reason is simple. The asset management and the custody has not been segregated. I want to give you the story of NSITF. From 1960 to 2004, when the Pension Reform Act was enacted, 2004, the total amount contributed by about 2 million or so employees was just about 54 billion. Trust fund, which is owned by NSITF, as at the end of December, has over 400 billion. So there's something wrong. And the reason is simple. assets need to be transparently managed and returns provided. And I can tell you, virtually all the RA holders from legacy from the NSITF scheme were not even given interest. In other words, it was only the principal that was transferred. So for somebody who has saved for about 20 years after 2024, he's only getting the interest back. Now clearly that shows a huge administrative burden on the fund, basically. So obviously, for us, there's also the issue, of course, public and rather poor service delivery, which the NLC president had made reference to. Lack of transparent reporting. NHIS, the National Housing Fund, and the employee compensation. When you go to the website of the agency that are managing those schemes, you don't have information. If you go to Trust Fund PFA, you'll see the audited account as of December. You will see the audited account of the funds they manage as of December last year. NSITF doesn't have that. National Housing Fund doesn't have that. NHIS doesn't have that. With the website, of course, is the only document that every Nigerian or any part of the world you can access. And that is number one yardstick for a transparent organization. And I believe this is something that cuts across, and we need to do that. Of course, public education and enlightenment is something that we need to also develop and ensure that. So we need to agree. We need to separate regulation and supervision. We need to also have asset management and custody so that they charge a fee. If today these organizations are charging a fee, rather than feeding or rather spending money from the fund, because this is other people's money. For a bank, there are specific requirements if you are managing deposit or other people's money. But for a public sector scheme, the returns you make on the investment, or rather the contribution by the employees, is the one that is being used to run the organization. And therefore, you cannot determine with precision. And meanwhile, some of them are even asked to pay for operating surplus, which is wrong. So we need to segregate those two and ensure that if for whatever reason, if we still want to retain the same structure, then they should be considered as asset managers and they charge a fee. And therefore you can cap and ensure that returns are still being credited to the contributions made by various contributors. Of course, service delivery, we need to introduce third-party review, and we also need to have a very robust reward and sanction to ensure that at least those who cannot maintain minimum service, they should be sanctioned. Service delivery is an issue, and then awareness is obviously another major issue. For state government, they can be allowed to adopt a more flexible scheme, basically with lower replacement ratios, otherwise they can't sustain it. And of course, we also need to have the informal sector, and as well as public education and enlightenment. So in summary, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, most of our schemes are not working, and they can only work if you adopt the contributory pension scheme model. There must be confidence. Why is it that in private sector people are not contributing? They are contributing because they don't know what happens to their contribution. Nobody is accountable to them. And of course, as long as I don't have statement, the tendency that I will not have confidence in ensuring that. So let's look at the models, and it's something we need to accept to secure these funds and also ensure the sustainability of even the managers. And distinguished ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your opportunity.
Comrades, I think we can do better with our very distinguished guest speakers. We have very limited time, and he has spoken to the issues from the very beginning. But we also have a full complement of other panelists who will bring in their perspective to this. I will go straight away, and let me also say that we have just about 5-6 minutes for each panelist, hoping that we will be able to take one or two comments also from the floor before we close. So I will begin with the Director General of the Pension Commission, Ajia Aisha Dayo Umar.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, my contribution to this discussion is a brief write-up I have on pension as a major area of social protection. I have listened very carefully to the presentation by our Malam MK Ahmad, and as far as I'm concerned, the paper has made its case. It has succeeded in what it has set out to do. So you may wonder, what did it set out to do? The paper set out to deliberate on social protection and how the lack of it can affect everything in a country, especially security. My focus, therefore, in discussing this paper is on the contributory pension scheme. I will look at its beautiful characteristics, its fundamental challenges, and recommend practical solutions that could help address the concerns of workers and all stakeholders. So, a little background. Social protection covers a range of policies and programs, all of which we need to reduce life consequences of poverty and exclusion. And that is where pension comes in. Pension is globally recognized as one of the basic areas of social protection. Its main objective is to make available to all citizens 60 years and above an income and therefore a life of dignity. The objective of pension therefore leads us straight to the paper presented. The paper did provide an insight on the genesis, the establishment, and the development of the CPS from the beginning of the reform in 2004 to the present state. So let's look at some of the characteristics of the CPS. In its 17 years of existence, the CPS, that is the Contributory Pension Scheme, has positively transformed the pension landscape in our country. It offers the best protection to workers after retirement. It is fully funded. It promotes transparency and accountability in the administration of pensions. It is dynamic, and it is indeed the most sustainable and secure social protection ever. Its sustainability, ladies and gentlemen, and security coincide with the values and objectives we all aspire to establish in Nigeria. But fantastic as the CPS is, it has challenges. The major constraints of implementing the CPS and expanding its coverage in Nigeria could be summarized as follows. First of all is the constitutional challenge. This challenge is peculiar to only the states. Although the PRA 2014 provides for the mandatory coverage of all state employees and those of local governments, many states have argued, and rightly so, that the National Assembly lacks the competence to legislate on pensions for the state. And they cite the Constitution. Section 210 of the 1999 Constitution, as amended, preserves this function of legislating for the states to the states' houses of assembly. The poor statistics, therefore, on the status of adoption and implementation of the CPS by the states is partly informed by this challenge. There is nothing we cannot force the states to adopt the contributory pension scheme. We can only encourage them, because we don't have the right to legislate for the states. So that is a serious problem, because so the states are doing whatever they like. The second challenge is that of compliance, and that is peculiar only to the private sector. There are delays and a lot of times non-remittance of pension contributions by employers for their employees. However, this has been tackled via the collaboration the Commission has established with the Bureau of Public Procurement. So the BPP ensures that pension compliance certificates is a prerequisite for companies bidding for government contracts. So that has helped. Furthermore, the Commission engages recovery agents to recover unremitted pension contributions from private sector employers. Since that recovery effort began, we have recovered about 72 billion, which is a lot. But so we ask ourselves, why must we resort to all these efforts to get pension paid? Why do we find it so difficult to do the right thing? So I think we are all involved in this problem. It's not about PENCOM, it's not about the scheme. They are all individual issues. On the part of government, we have talked about the constitutional challenge. We have talked about the compliance issue. Now, the one that concerns government is the accumulation of huge liabilities. This challenge has eroded confidence of stakeholders in the pension reform. However, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Recently, the president, I'm sure you all know, approved the settlement of outstanding accrued rights of federal government retirees. Accrued rights are pensions and gratuity and pre-reform. That is pre-2004. So that was a lot of money, and the government has approved, has provided the money, and payments have been made. Also approved and paid by Mr. President is the 2.5 shortfall of the minimum rate of pension contribution. This percentage has been settled for all retirees. We have also paid active workforce up to December 2017. So 2017 to 2020, arrangements have been concluded to pay for those as well. We have not paid for 2021 because they are just going through our enrollment processes now. Now there's another issue, that is inadequate pension payout. Even though the CPS is fully funded, ladies and gentlemen, the final payment is a function of the actual balance in a person's retirement savings account. So contributions are also just a percentage of the monthly salary. Employers and employees are allowed to do more than the minimum of the 18% subject to availability. Unfortunately, both employers and employees, especially in the public sector, stick to the minimum percentage. This results in low accumulation of benefits, especially where the salary is already low. And the result? Low payout upon retirement. And then everybody blames PENCOM. Employees, we encourage them to look at voluntary additional contribution if they can afford it. That is one way out. So all these issues have made the CPS, the Contributory Pension Scheme, very unpopular among employees of Treasury-funded MDS, despite the fact that it remains the most sustainable and secure social protection ever. So what is our way forward? What do we want to do? How are we going to do it? It is my considered opinion that the following practical solutions are needed to address some of the concerns of all stakeholders. First of all, we have to encourage the federal government to settle all outstanding liabilities in any ways we can. This is possible if appropriations are made and cash backed, funds released timely. All these are possible. Payment of pensions, my dear people, must be treated with the same priority as payment of salaries if we want to move forward. Attending to outstanding liabilities by government will build and sustain public confidence in the contributory pension scheme. We should stop fighting PENCOM and look to government for our solutions. We also need to have a better constructive engagement with the states, because we need to be able to coordinate, collaborate our efforts to enable us unlock all the numerous benefits of the CPS to every Nigerian. We are missing a lot now because it's like everybody is fighting the other person. Everybody is blaming the next person. If we don't come together and collaborate and coordinate our efforts, we are not going to get anywhere. Micro pension, thankfully, it's expanding coverage to the informal sector. Now, there's another thing that is very important. The federal government must avoid policy somersault through exemption of certain categories of employees from the CPS. Of recent, the PAMSECs, the heads of service, have found a way to exempt themselves. That is not a very good example. The police are trying to get exempted. Everybody is trying to get exempted. Where are we coming from? We are coming from the defined benefit system that did not work. When we were practicing the defined benefit system, pension was just a promise. Government told you that if you worked for X number of years, it will give you Y amount. So by the time you worked those number of years, government told you what? Yes, we know we owe you, we don't have money. When we do, we'll pay you. And chances are we never got paid. So we moved to the contributory pension scheme to make our lives what? Easier. So I don't understand why people are struggling to go back to the defined benefit system. We need to revisit that, because going back to the defined benefit system is unsustainable, and it has the capacity to undermine other socioeconomic policies of the federal government. We don't want to go backwards. Whatever is not convenient for us, we shrug it off. We need to go through the difficulties to go forward. And finally, there is a need for all stakeholders. We need to individually discharge our respective responsibilities. We need to streamline our actions. We need to learn to collaborate with each other. That is the only way we can attain the common goal of consolidating the gains of the contributory pension scheme and expanding our coverage. That is the only time we will know that we have begun our journey towards social protection. Thank you very much.
The Nigerian Social Insurance Trust Fund, which emanated through the ILO Convention 102 of 1952, though various other organizations has actually come up, but the one of the current Nigerian Social Insurance Trust Fund, which is the ECS, started in July 2011. That commenced, the scheme was commenced in 2011 with the effect of the awareness campaign, which involved the Nigerian Labour Congress, the Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, through workshops, seminars, and interactive forums that was held to be able to enlighten Nigerians on the need of the social protection of the ECS, which is one of the contents of the decent work program by the ILO 102. So by doing so, the organization, the scheme of the ECS, has 6 mandates. The first one is to provide for an open and fair system of guarantee and adequate compensation for employees of their dependents for death, injury, disease, and disability arising out of or in the course of employment. Secondly, is to provide the rehabilitation to employees with work-related disabilities as much as possible. Then the third one is to establish and maintain a solvent compensation fund managed in the interest of employees and employers. Then the fourth one is to provide for fair and adequate assessment for employers. The fifth, provide an appeal procedure that is simple, fair, accessible, with minimal delays. And the last, to combine effort and resources with relevant stakeholders for the prevention of workplace disability, including enforcement of occupational safety and health standards. And currently, there are several challenges that we have ongoing in there because which is like less enrollment in the scheme. As at date, we have less than 10% of the employers in Nigeria that are registered in the ECS. And then only 30% of those ones that are registered are contributing. There, the 10% of the employers that are registered with the ECS is a total of 126,039 employers. And out of that is only 42,012 employers that are really complying, that are in compliance, with almost 80-something thousand that are not complying in one way or the other. And what will somebody consider to be the real cause of this? A is the reluctancy of employers to comply, which somebody can attribute to be the cause of the fraud or issues, that is the underlying issues that is within the system for some time. Then other challenges include the under declaration of employees, emolument, and staff strength. Because during the enforcement process, the 1% contribution comes from the total payroll of the employers. But the employers that are registered in one way or the other do what? They under-declare their staff strength, as well declare lower payroll for their staffs. Then the other one is the compliance certificate forgery and fraud by employers. Most of the employers do form or print compliance certificates on their own and send it to BPP. But currently we are in the process to be able to we are cleaning all these things up as at date. Then we'll talk about the inadequate awareness of the ECH. Previously, the fund has engaged in various claims payments. But if you go out there, someone questions, what does NSITF do? And the reason why they question what Nigerian Social Insurance Trust Fund do is because of this inadequate awareness. But I stand here to tell you that as at date, we have a total of 7 to 12 families that are collecting 1 million naira and above monthly because of death benefit. And then we have 100 and plus families that receive 100,000 and above, and we have almost 200 plus also that receive 20,000 and above in benefits. Then we have millions on a monthly basis that goes for refund of medical reform back to the employers. So in so doing, I believe that this organization right now is doing the best, and we'll try as much as we can now to make sure that the claims that we'll try to maintain a 14-day or less than 14 days processing time to make sure that everybody that file a claim receive this claim between 12 and 14 days. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the President of Nigerian Labour Congress, the Chairman of the Trade Union Congress, the DG NECA, who are all present here, the representative of ILO, and the other MDS who are related to these discussions. It's my honor to be invited, honestly, to be one of the discussants at this occasion. Roundtable on social protection cover in Nigeria, organized by the NLC. In particular, I'm particularly pleased that the theme of this expanding protection cover and ensuring its effective implementation in Nigeria. We must therefore commend the leadership for this. So it's undeniably the fact that currently, though we are getting out of it, but we have to know that the operation and development of the world economy has been put in serious jeopardy by the COVID-19 pandemic. And that most of the world received this unprepared. But it has taught us a lot of lessons. We have to think out of the box all the time and envision all possible scenarios to drive the economy and drive other innovations. The coverage of these issues on this roundtable is quite extensive, touching the pensions, the health, housing, and other social indices surrounding the welfare and security of Nigerian workers. However, I have been asked, as said by the chairman of the occasion, to dwell on the challenges and way forward surrounding the provision of affordable housing and social housing in Nigeria, particularly through the instrumentality of the National Housing Fund, to which the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, the institution I manage, are the managers and administrators of the fund. So in normal times, you'll find that housing finance is seen as the springboard for socio-economic development of nations, suggesting that any nation desirous of advancement cannot afford to relegate the housing delivery to the background. The positive impact of housing on all facets of the country, of the nation, is unambiguous. The task of Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria is to collect and manage the National Housing Fund. As you quite well know, the National Housing Fund is a contributory scheme by Nigerian workers. When we said Nigerian, we mean both the formal and informal, public and the private sector. They are to contribute 2.5% of their income into the National Housing Fund, to which the Federal Mortgage Bank manages. And this fund is used to provide or to assist Nigerians access home ownership, affordable home ownership. By affordable housing, in my own view, we refer to housing units or residential property whose prices or cost of purchase are no more than 1/3 of the total income of each household within a target income group or bracket. So for housing to be affordable, someone must acquire it with 1/3 of his income, of his salary, for the remaining term of his tenure. That's why it is usually the rule in the public service to benchmark loan repayment affordability within the 1/3 of the worker's salary. So provision of affordable housing has been a persistent challenge, particularly in developing countries, including Nigeria. All efforts at addressing the problem has met with very little or no success. A lot of countries have adopted different strategies of different times to tackle the housing shortage and provide adequate housing to their citizens. Some call it social housing, some call it public housing or affordable mortgages. But in all this, you'll find that the abiding thread that determines affordability is pricing, which is directly dictated by the source and availability of housing development or mortgage finance. Most of the houses you find now, they may not be affordable to most of the contributors to the National Housing Fund. That's why the Federal Mortgage Bank, in an attempt, we have to develop a lot of strategies. So it is tempting to say that the government has done nothing since the problem, rather than go away, has simply worsened. However, it is still, this will be grossly unfair if you say that. There have been responses and achievements so far over time at the head of the major government agency, Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, established to help deal with this problem. I can say we are indeed making a mark in the efforts of reducing the housing deficit in Nigeria. Housing is one of the key pillars of the current administration's reforms agenda, and this goes with a plan to provide a platform for affordable housing development and mortgage finance, which is targeted at the middle and low-income groups. If you look at the mortgage finance in Nigeria, the origin of it, you'll find that it can be traced to the pre-colonial, pre-independence era, when the British administration held for the governance. The colonial administration evolved the first housing scheme for civil servants, involving construction of low-cost houses and the provision of loans to acquire them. This was followed by the establishment of the Nigerian Building Society, which is aimed at later to give loans to the civil servants to acquire houses. The MBS, the Management Society, was later evolved into the present-day Federal Mortgage of Nigeria in the 1970s. The Mortgage Institution Act, Decree number 53 of 1989, was also promulgated to encourage and regulate the participation of mortgage financing through the establishment of the primary mortgage institutions. So in all this, you'll find that the National Housing Fund, its establishment and objectives are that it was enacted primarily to address the constraints to mobilization of long-term funds for housing development and ensuring that every Nigerian has access to housing loans at affordable rates of interest. The FMBN Act of 1993 also conferred the collection and management of the fund, as I said earlier. So NHF still offers the unique advantages of single-digit interest loans at 6 to 7%. If you go to the open market in the commercial mortgage, you'll find that it's almost 26-27%. But since the NHF is a collection of money mobilized from Nigerians, the loan has to be given at an affordable interest rate of 6 to 7%. And the loan products also, you'll find that the repayment tenure goes up to 30 years for a mortgage to be paid, which if you go to the open market, no one can give you more than 5 years to repay your mortgage. So also the collaboration between the PPP, public-private partnership, is another sector where government partners with qualified private sector entities to finance this mass housing. This apart from the availability of the offshore funding and other things. So the FMBN, as I said earlier, there are a lot of collaborations. The last one, which is the Cooperative Housing Development Loan, is created by the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria purposely to assist the informal sector. As said by the chairman of the president of the Nigerian Labour Congress, that the informal sector, they constitute the major chunk of the Nigerian workers. We created the Cooperative Housing Development Loan, where cooperative societies can come forward and collect a loan from Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria to build houses for their cooperative members, and then we create mortgage loans for them. This has been ongoing. Over 160 cooperative societies have benefited from this, and it's ongoing. On the improved transparency, FMBN has improved its transparency in the collection and management of the fund. Currently, all contributors of the National Housing Fund, they receive alerts for their contribution, monthly alert, once their employers send these collections. And there's an app developed, *219#, where you can even check your own contributions, either monthly or cumulative. There's a website, a functional website by the FMBN, where we have www.fmbn.gov.ng, where you can access and check all our services. We have sensitization now currently, whereby all Nigerians are fully sensitized on the operation of the National Housing Fund scheme. So in conclusion, I'm going to say the fact that affordable housing development can be a viable platform for the reduction of the nation's housing deficit and enhancing home ownership, particularly among the low and medium income earners in Nigeria. What we need to do as stakeholders is to continue to play active roles to address the challenges in the sector, as the organizers of this forum have demonstrated. We thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you very much.
My name is Sani Garba Afa. I'm the Director, or rather General Manager, Human Resource and Administration at the National Health Insurance Scheme. And because this is an issue that has to do with labor and staff matters, that was why he, the Chief Executive, being indisposed, said I should come and represent him at this very important occasion. Going by the presentation of the keynote speaker, who has mentioned that NHIS is one of the key social security protection agencies, we are indeed one of it, and of course, as rightly mentioned by the president of the NLC, he has been part, or rather NLC has been part and parcel of the journey for the establishment of the National Health Insurance Scheme way back to the decree that was signed by General Abdusalam Obakar in May 1999. But after the emergence of the political dispensation, President Olusegun Obasanjo has to review the decree and review it to the national law of NFF 42 of 2004 prior to the commencement or the formal launch of the program in June 2005, with the start of the federal formal sector program as the main beneficiaries of the social health insurance program. Of course, when General Olusegun Obasanjo came, he had wanted starting the program from the informal sector, but unavailability of basic data, or rather baseline reports that will give guidance as to who will contribute what and where. That was why the informal sector program was not the one that was started with. So the federal formal sector, civil servants of the federal government of Nigeria were the major beneficiaries, and up to now, based on the assertion of the keynote speaker, we have so far covered 98% of the federal formal employees, of which majority of those people here living here are our beneficiaries in one way or the other, by way of choosing their private hospitals or public hospitals with themselves, spouses, and their biological children below the age of 18. That has been the offering of the scheme as part of the social protection responsibility of the federal government in terms of giving Nigerians the cover as far as that is concerned. Of course, as rightly mentioned, the scheme has undergone a lot of turbulences in terms of management, particularly at the leadership level, to the extent that while the keynote speaker said there were as much as 9 chief executives, but our records in the scheme makes that the current chief executive is the number 12 chief executive of the scheme over its 20 years of existence. But be that as it may, the scheme has a mandate of providing quality and affordable health care to all Nigerians, irrespective of their political leaning, irrespective of their social groupings, because the essence of the social health insurance is to provide cover for people, particularly at the time of need. It's a social health insurance arrangement, of course, which has difference with the private health insurance that are being run mainly by the health maintenance organizations. But be that as it may, Nigerians have been looking forward to seeing that there's this main is giving the needed impact on what is the mandate it has. But unfortunately, so many challenges, the major one of which was the enabling law. The enabling law that established the NHIS did not make the NHIS, or rather social insurance, mandatory, but it rather made it optional. So that was why not all Nigerians are covered. But it has been mentioned that it's about 7 or 5% of Nigerians that are being covered. That is figurative. But the records that I have as of today, from the records of the formal sector department that is responsible for the registration and enrollment of Nigerians, be it at the formal sector program, community-based, tertiary institutions, the newly introduced program of gift shift, that is group, individual, and family social insurance program, we have as of today a total of 13 million Nigerians that are enrolled into the various programs. But of course, this cannot be unconnected with what I mentioned to you earlier, that is the law establishing the scheme, which has made it voluntary. But various efforts and stakeholders have come together and have introduced so many initiatives and many arrangements to the extent that we have presented our case for the amendment of the bill to make it mandatory, which has been passed into law, rather passed into the third reading by the National Assembly, by the Senate, and concurred by the National Assembly is now currently being awaiting presidential assent for it to be made mandatory. And as soon as that is made mandatory, certainly that will give more room and will give more window and more access to more Nigerians in terms of their coverage. But beyond that, we are currently doing a lot of things because with the coming of the current chief executive, who is Professor Mohamed Nasir Sambo, he has introduced 3-point rebranding agenda, with the first one being value reorientation. How has the scheme been operating in the past? In the past, of course, when the scheme came on board, there was no established way of knowing what is the mandate of the scheme and who has to come and drive the process for the attainment of the scheme's mandate. So, no structured way of knowing who are supposed to be in the scheme and what are they going to do in terms of mandating or carrying out the responsibility and mandate that is being handled in the scheme. For that reason, we have a lot of people, but the capacity to do what is expected is very much not there. So for that reason, he has done a need assessment, a holistic need assessment in terms of the personnel, in terms of the needs, the mandates, and other things that are being done to ensure that the mandate of the scheme is being achieved. For that, the first thing that he did in the first year of his coming was to develop a 10-year strategic plan whereby areas of needs, manpower planning, training and development, and then above all, the personnel that are needed to drive the process are being properly placed and positioned for the purpose of attaining the mandate. For that reason, he identified that in the entire 1,300 workforce that we have at the time that he came, only 45 of them are medical personnel. And for that reason, how can you imagine a scheme of this nature that is having this kind of mandate will only be having only 45 medical personnel, comprising of medical doctors, pharmacists, nurses, and medical lab scientists to drive this process. So for that reason, he has to first and foremost know that what we need to do is to have enough medical personnel that will drive the process, quality assurance, accreditation and re-accreditation process across the 38 state offices that we have in the Federation. For that reason, we liaise with the Office of the Head of Service, the Federal Character Commission, and our supervising ministry to ensure that we get approval for the employment and engagement of this complement of medical personnel, which we have succeeded in doing between the period of June to August. And by the beginning of this month of September, almost all of the medical personnel have reported to the 38 state offices of the Federation that we have, which is the starting point for the insurance of making sure that what is needed to be done at the facility level, at the health maintenance organization level, and at the state offices level, and in liaison with the state health insurance agencies is being maintained. Not only that, we went ahead to see that we invite all the stakeholders, the health maintenance organization, the state health insurance agencies, the development partners, and other stakeholders to what we call health insurance under one roof, so that we will be talking on the same language, operating on the same guidelines, and then doing what is expected appropriately and mandatorily. For that reason, we have come out with plans on how to go about reviewing the current operational guidelines for the scheme, the current drug list, and then the service level procedures in terms of referral for the hospitals that are having the extent of knowing that if something is at their level and they cannot do it, they will have to refer it by way of getting the approval code from the health maintenance organization. So the necessary complement of the medical personnel that will confirm the authenticity or otherwise of those things that are being done is being handled appropriately and objectively. Not only that, many Nigerians are not having the program of health insurance because many are saying that it is only workers that are being given this opportunity. But the current management of the scheme has come up with a group, individual and family social health insurance program, which is having the slogan of leaving no one behind, so that all Nigerians, be it at individual level, be it at your family level, be it at a group level, in terms of associations, clubs or memberships, you will have to get yourself together, and with a minimum of 15,000 naira per person per annum, you can come together and get yourself enrolled without necessarily being either a public or private company worker. Not only that, we had gone ahead to discuss with other major stakeholders in terms of building the capacity of our staff to ensure that they have the necessary capacity to drive whatever process that we have. And the state offices are now being fully automated by way of deployment of our ENHIS, that is electronic NHIS, by way of seeing that you may not have to go to the offices in not too distant future to get yourself enrolled. We will develop a shortcut that you now know how to go about getting yourself registered so that you can now be part and parcel of the NHIS family by way of choosing your own facility and enjoying the services that the NHIS is offering across the length and breadth of Nigeria. What we need the NLC to help us in doing is that our bill is currently at the National Assembly awaiting presidential assent. So as a major stakeholder, we want their support and collaboration in ensuring that this is being done at the speed of light by the grace of God. Not only that, we are still sincere and appreciative of the efforts of Mr. President, particularly in some weeks ago, he has formed a committee for the reform of the health sector under the chairmanship of His Excellency, the Vice President, Mr. Osinbajo, and our Chief Executive and other key Chief Executive of the health sector are part of that committee so that we can have a better health system in the country, so that we will not be making reference to others, but others should be making reference to Nigeria in terms of knowing that we have the will, we have the capacity, and we have the resource to drive the health system to the better stage at the next level agenda. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I'm grateful.
Please, can we give them another round of applause? I hope you have taken enough notes that you can be able to use during the interactive session. Very quickly, let me go to the Industrial Training Fund. Most of us are not very familiar with the workings of the Industrial Training Fund. It is expected to train our Nigerian youths, particularly those from our institutions, not only on entrepreneurship, but I think it's also about the issue of self-reliance, where we will be able to train people that will be able to operationalize both the theory and the practical aspect of it. And therefore, for a long time, they have handled the aspect of industrial attachment for various students, who in turn will be used by the manufacturing sector, by different sectors of the economy, to actually drive the process of development. So it will be my honor and privilege to invite the representative of Sir Joseph Ari, the DG and Chief Executive Officer of ITF, to give us the perspective. How do we ensure that our teeming youth coming from our institutions becomes themselves employers of labor instead of roaming the streets? How do we impact the necessary skill and knowledge that will make them actually available for employment opportunities in the different sectors of the economy? And how do we ensure that this scheme, we can be able to track progress and success of this scheme? I think it's an issue that all of us will be interested. So let me yield the floor to you to speak on this very important issue.
Thank you, President, sir. I stand here on behalf of my Director General and Chief Executive, Sir Joseph N. Ari, who is unavoidably absent, but he sends his goodwill, sir, to NLC and the leadership of this great union. He has high respect for NLC. He wished he was here. Having said that, for us in the ITF, we see social protection cover as something that is dear to us. And the reason is not far-fetched. One, the fact that we are looking at people. It's the human capital that we are looking at. Two, the focus to the human capital becomes the beneficiary. They also serve as drivers of the economy. So basically for us in the ITF, we see ourselves just fitting into this social protection cover or front, as the United Nations might call it. For us in the ITF, under the leadership of Sir Joseph N. Ari, we've been able to refocus our vision so that we can address the issue of skills, just like the president said. And we have a slogan in the ITF that's skill is the currency of the 21st century. If you don't have skill, you are likely going to perish. But if you have skill, there's no way that your life cannot be better, because definitely you have something that can put food on your table and can make your life better. Wherever you are, whether you are within the formal sector or the informal sector. We have basically 4 key areas of our mandate. One is to promote, provide, and encourage acquisition of skills within the Nigerian economy, both within the public and private. The other one is for also help us set and regulate training standards in the area of apprenticeship, craftsmanship, technicians, and so on. We do that in collaboration with other sister agencies of government and also the private sector. But under the able leadership of Sir Joseph N. Ari, what we've tried to do is to refocus our attention now by way of including our youths into the program of events that we carry out in the ITF. The president just quoted about 33.3% of Nigerian youths that are unemployed. That's from the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics. And the ITF is now working assiduously to see how we can, in our own little way, address some of these challenges. But how do we intend to do it? We've been able to do it using the organized private sector in one area, and then in other areas we've been able to drive it within the ITF. Using the organized sector, private sector, ITF have a program we call Technical Skills Development Program that we partner with NECA. And in that program, we identify what we call brownfield skills training centers, centers that are already established, so that we can now send young men and women, Nigerians, into those areas so that they can learn and develop their skills. And we are doing that for over 11 years now with NECA, and we've been able to reach out to so many youths such that we've been able to give them skills. It may interest you to know that more than 96% of those trained under this scheme are readily available and taken by the organized private sector and sometimes the public sector too. So our rate of enrollment in terms of giving people skills that can put food on their table, giving them employable skills is very high under this particular platform that we have. In fact, the Vice President recently, we had a meeting with the Office of the Vice President, the SGF, and the idea is, how do we share the model that ITF and NECA are now running? Because it has been a very successful program for us. And on the other side, within the ITF, we've been able to come up with programs that will add value by way of taking people out of unemployment. And because of inclusiveness that we have, and that we are also pursuing in line with international protocols and all that, we have special skills for women. We call it Women Skills Empowerment Program, WSEP. The WSEP is to address the issue of unemployment among our female folks, in our society. So that program is also there for them. And each time we train in different skill areas, we also ensure that we give them starter packs at the end of the day. The idea is we want them to start something on their own, in our own little way in the ITF, by making sure that we have functional centers that can carry out all these technical programs. We have just 4 of them spread over the nation, and you know that 4 is not enough. We are hoping that we'll be able to have partnership that can help us so that we can enhance that. We have one of the best model skills training center in Nigeria. I make bold to say that there is no university that has the facilities that we have in some of these centers, and then we are working towards ensuring that we get to that point. What then are our challenges quickly? I don't have time. One is the issue of funding. Technical skills is not cheap. It's not the same thing as doing a management program. It's capital intensive, it has consumable, it has machines, it has equipment. So it's expensive. Operations are being done, sometimes without working together in terms of other agencies and things like that. Going forward quickly, ITF needs additional funding, we're hoping on the government that even the ones we have, we will be allowed to effectively deploy them so that we can act by way of contributing to the economy of our great nation. And then we're also looking at a situation where we shall synergize with partners, and we are happy to be here, President, so that we can look at areas that we can collaborate with NLC by way of training. All of us here are workers one way or the other, and one day we'll retire. And we know the casualty of people that retire. ITF have a very robust program that we can work with NLC so that as we retire, we can have good life, so that we can live well, rather than us dying immediately after we retire. So we are ready to work with NLC to do that. And then we're also looking at NLC helping the ITF. We're looking at how our acts can be amended very soon. And we're looking up to NLC that will support us in the amendment of our acts so that we can serve Nigeria better and then we can serve this nation better. Thank you for giving us this opportunity, and God bless you all.
A round of applause for him, please. Without much ado, it is my honor and privilege to invite Comrade Barrister Evo Tako, former President NASU, two-time Treasurer, Nigerian Labour Congress, a former member of the board of National Pension Commission. In fact, they are the pioneer members of the board of the National Pension Commission, and a pension consultant in his own right.
Yes, the current federal government is doing a lot through the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development. However, all what that ministry is doing, if it is not backed by any enabling law, it is just standing on sandy ground, and it can be changed at any time. So what we talk about, if we must institutionalize what that ministry is doing now, there should be an enabling law that will be able to put it on firm standing. If the contributory pension scheme was not under a law, if it was only a government policy, we would not have been talking about it now. This brings us, unfortunately, the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria provides for economic, social, and cultural rights in rather grand and lofty terms in form of fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy in Chapter 2 of the Constitution. Unfortunately, these rights are, however, denied enforceability under the Constitution, as it prefers to see them as goals and objectives which government is to strive to attain. What we should look at now is, comrade, in this gathering also, is what is the role of the state in the provision of social protection to citizens? Public policy drives from responsibility of state to advance, protect the needs of citizens. The state exists for the common good of all. The state exists to do to its citizens those things they could not ordinarily achieve on their own. The role of the state is will also reflect the interaction of respective roles of the two arms of government, that is the legislative and the executive. The state is therefore expected to play two roles. First, the state is the largest employer of labor in the country. And then secondly, it plays a mediatory role as a regulator in social works of citizens. I'm not going to waste time to talk much about funding of social protection. I will, however, want to talk on two institutions that have made presentation here. First, the National Health Insurance Scheme. As workers, we are part of the health insurance scheme. But as pensioners, we are no longer. I'm a retired pensioner. I retired from the Federal Public Service as a director. On retirement, you are no longer part of the health insurance scheme. But at retirement, in old age, that is the time health is really necessary, because there are a lot of issues in health of old age, of elderly people. And I think that the health insurance and PENCOM should find a way of continuing the health insurance scheme for pensioners, for retirees. They should not only take care of them when they are alive, when they are still in active service, and when they are retired from service, they are no longer part of the health insurance scheme. It doesn't stand well, and I think health insurance and PENCOM should synergize and see how the old elderly citizens are adequately taken care of. The next institution and issue, because these are all social insurances, people, workers are contributing, is the National Housing Fund. The National Housing Fund, with due respect, sir, permit me to say that when I was still in service, we don't call it National Housing Fund, we call it National Housing Fraud. We call it fraud because workers were seen like people who were contributing to keep government going. Because on retirement, they never got houses. I contributed for the National Housing Fund, and I retired as a director in the public service. I never had a house through the National Housing Fund. That is not what it was meant to be. So the fund should see how workers who contribute will not only collect their money back when they retire, but they should have houses as they are going. The next thing I want to look at in the pension there is pension reviews. The Constitution provides that in section 173, provides that in subsection 3 says that pension should be reviewed every 5 years or with any salary increase, which one comes first. This is taking place under the defined benefit scheme, but it is not done. As we talk today, I retired in 2012. My pension has not been reviewed in line with the constitutional provision. What the PENCOM, I give it that PENCOM had done what they call enhancement of pension, and those enhancement of pension are nothing to go by. So what it means is that government and PENCOM should do everything possible to implement the constitutional provision of a review of pensions under the CPS, for workers to be able to be assured that this CPS is working for them. The other thing is minimum guaranteed pension. There is provision for minimum guaranteed pension. However, this minimum guaranteed pension is not yet there. We know there are people who are collecting 10,000 naira as pension. What is 10,000 naira as pension? The point remains that minimum pension should not be far, far below minimum wage, because the worker and the pensioner are in the same market, whether in housing or feeding or health care. For instance, let me use myself to say this. I know that I am under the program withdrawal, And I have almost more than, if not 15 million inside my savings account, RSA. But I'm collecting 115,000 pension. What is the money remaining there to do? Is it that when I die, my children who will collect it because another program will run will now say, we thank God for a wife well spent because I'm leaving money for them. Let me spend my money. So therefore, review should be done in such a way that the worker will live a comfortable life, still having money that will pay his pension. And I think that sitting down with labor, all these things can be adequately addressed. So we should do everything to ensure, and appropriately, because I don't want to take time, we will talk with Congress and see what lines are we going to take to ensure that state governors, even if we are going to begin to arm in advocacy, we will continue to write on each state and shame them until they do the right thing. Thank you, comrades.
We had the last speaker. Of course, he has already set the tone in terms of the critical missing links in some of these institutions and the need to build synergy. We have a full complement of unions from both public and private sector. And so we expect that we'll be able to bring forward questions and comments that will enrich the process of engagement that we're having with this institution. So we will take a maximum of 6, and I want it to be as brief as possible because people are taking notes, and we hope that it will be a very valuable contribution to the entire discussion. May I then start with the chair of the Joint Public Negotiating Council, Comrade Benjamin.
Thank you, panelists, for your submissions. We have listened to you, and we from the Joint Council, from day one we were elected, we have started discussing all the issues that the panelists have made submissions here. We are concerned about the issue of housing for public servants and all the workers in Nigeria. Today, we will continue to hear of affordable housing, and houses are out of reach for us in this country. But we'll be hearing affordable. We are contributing money to Federal Mortgage Bank every month. He said that they give out. As far as I'm concerned, I've been contributing for 26 years now. I have not seen any alert. So please, we have to look at that collectively and see how to resolve that. Thank you very much.
Comrade Benjamin Atoni is the president of Amalgamated Union of Public Corporation, Civil Service Technical and Recreational Services Employees, OPTA, as well as the chair of the National Joint Negotiating Council of the Public Service.
My worries immediately I enter here, sir, was that I expected a ministry that will regulate most of these our discussions today, which is the Ministry of Labor, that are empowered to enforce some of the compliances. And to my dismay, I could not locate any, whether the senior minister nor the junior, or a representation. And that caused for a lot of gap. But my questions, and I really want to comment for those who are still sitting, my questions just simply goes. What are the linkages and implications of these discussions based on the minimum wage we have today, that is 30,000 naira, and which is not largely implementable in many states. What are the linkage to effective carrying out this institutionalized responsibility based on the earning? What are the implications and the linkages of, even if you want to put houses together for the poor masses, bearing in mind the rate of inflation we have in Nigeria today, bearing in mind the rate of exchange rates we have, and considering the salary that is available by the contributor. I say this because most of these contributions are equally based on percentages. Whether it is worker, is employer, you take some percentage to contribute. If it is compensations, companies are equally expected to pay a percentage of a movement of their employee. So it's a determinant factor. And what is the availability of it? Lastly, sir, is the issue of compliance, like as I have said. And PENCOM is not here because our own experience in the private sector is equally that some of the owner of the industry equally romance with some of the officers of the regulators at the detriment of the workers. Because how can you reconcile an idea of an organization or a company that runs for 2, 3 years, 5 years, no remittance, none of them is in the court for enforcing compliance? Where do we go from here? Thank you.
On the extension of social protection into the to the informal sector, the primary issue here is that lack of organization. The informal sector is not organized, and back in the days they've tried tried various measures to be able to assess them using their union or cooperative, but the adamant nature of people or reluctancy to be able to commit funds towards some projects or some schemes like that, bearing the fact that they always hear about fraud in NSITF or society misappropriation of fund, whenever such what do they call it, such is brought to their attention, they reject it, and there's no follow-up on that. But as I'm telling you right now, a new unit has been created in the enforcement unit, which is called the informal sector. So what I will solicit for today is that every person that is here, whether it's you, your cousin, your nephew, or anybody that you know that is within the workforce of Nigeria, please try to be able to intimate this person to know that this is what is your right. And that person has the right to be able to do what? Call us. We have if the person get to our webpage, be able to call NSITF and know whether his or her organization is registered. And if it's registered, try to know whether your name is there. Not just that they registered. Some people collect the forms, they register, they fill the form, return it without complying. So what I'm asking for is that the union, the NLC and the TUC will equally help us to reach out to the majority of the employers to key into this scheme. Thank you.
Comrade MD, thank you so much. Can I then invite the Executive Secretary of the NHIS, ably represented, in 2 minutes, your question and the final report.
Well, thank you once again, and all existing protocols duly observed. The first one is concerning the retirees program. That is what arrangement has been made. Just as rightly mentioned by the representative of the PENCOM, we have initially started a discussion with the National Pension Commission, but because of the inavailability of the window to fund the arrangement, that was why the arrangement was stalled. Because under health insurance, whatever that one does, there has to be somebody to pay. But where there is nobody to pay, then that's where the issue comes up. So PENCOM has no window of how to fund it. And individual retirees can only fund it through their RSA, but that one has not been fully highlighted and mentioned to them. And for that reason, the arrangement has not been stalled. But thank God for the intervention of the Office of the Head of Civil Service of the Federation. And they have now introduced an issue that is being handled by the Federal Ministry of Health in collaboration with the Head of Service and NHIS, where the retired permanent secretary is chairing the technical committee that are working on the modality for the inclusion of the retirees after their retirement. That is a work in progress, and maybe before the end of the year, we should be able to come up with something that will be made public to the generality of all of us, particularly the retirees and those of us that are on the queue. Secondly, concerning the private sector, there's mentions that private sectors are having their own problem of health insurance, but it's been different. And if you recall at my initial stage of discussion with you, I told you that what NHI is running is a social health insurance program that is purely social, that you don't have to titrate, you don't have to digress or investigate persons. But for private companies that are doing private health insurance, they have categories of the packages. The executives are having their own package, the middle level are having their own package, and the lower staff are having their own package. And under that arrangement, the health maintenance organization will usually take or subject whoever that is going to be given the cover to be titrated in terms of his ailments and his age. And that will determine the contribution rate that they will pay, which will now be the premium that will be paid upfront between the period of cover from beginning of the year to the end of the year. And at the end of the year, it has to be reduced, and then depending on your age, your disease burden, that will be the type of burden that you will take, and that is how the private health insurance is being run, which is completely different from the social health insurance that the NHIS is running with the public sector. And that is why I said, in addition to the social insurance that is being covered by public and private organizations, and then informal sector at the community level, we have introduced the group individual and family social health insurance program, which is having the same benefit package, same operational guideline, and same treatment and referral protocols that people can enjoy. And with that, you can register yourself as an individual, but the starting point for the registration is 45,000 naira. But you can take yourself and 2 additional persons. But for the family, you start from a minimum of 4 with 60,000 naira, and you can expand to as much as 9 people. And for the group, you can start from the minimum of 10, and you can expand it infinitum, in as much as you have the ability to be paying 15,000 naira per person per annum for 8 additional persons that you want to add on. I think that is the areas that I think we are to respond to. Thank you.
These dances are displaying the unity of Nigeria in diversity. And so our diversity is a source of strength.